You're listening to On Mission with Dr. Matt Davis, a podcast designed to explore the personal mission of everyday leaders. Hear from men and women who are making a difference in their corner of the world and discover what keeps them on mission. Welcome to On Mission. I am Matt Davis, and today I have a very special guest with me in the studio, someone that I have been trying to source for a long time. And in fact, this is season 10 of the On Mission podcast, and we have had over 115 episodes already, and even more than that, guests. In the first season, we used to have 2 guests on at a time, and that was kind of crazy to try to fit that in as I think back. And that is the one and only Dr. Bob Griffin, and he is a bit of a legend around here, and so we are very thankful for the opportunity to have him in studio today. Bob and his wife, Teresa, now live in Watertown, Wisconsin, and they have 3 notorious adult children. I mean notable. I meant notable. I don't know why I said notorious. All of them are Maranatha alumni. Dr. Griffin is a retired pastor and college professor. That makes him sound very dignified. Yes, very important. His favorite meals are Thanksgiving dinner, a seafood buffet, traditional American food, egg foo young, and falafel. All right, so that is just, I don't know if that even narrows anything down at all. His hobbies include rock climbing, mountaineering, Civil War reenacting. I knew that one. I did know that one. Traveling and writing. And he is a prolific writer and a very entertaining writer, as a matter of fact. His favorite sports teams is the same as mine. Anyone that beats the Packers.
Amen.
And he is a 100% Vikings fan, loyal to the Lakers also. I don't know if he has a thing for purple or what that deal is.
The Minneapolis
Lakers.
Minneapolis
Lakers. Oh, that now makes sense. And because he grew up in Minneapolis. So, Bob, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you, I think.
I think so, too. Listen, I am so excited about this conversation because I have had the benefit of getting to know you through your children. And so I don't know if that's how you want to be judged, but as fathers, I kind of know that's inevitable. Yeah. And we have known each other since I was in college. In fact, you were reminding me just a moment ago that you remember when we first met. What was I'm a little scared to ask, but what was I doing when we first met and I was in college?
My boys were both business majors here at Maranatha in the dark ages back in the 90s.
Yes,
and they were involved in music as far as just enjoying singing. And evidently there was a group of 4 or 5 guys who got together and sang. And when we came to visit them, we pastored in Wyoming. So we drove here to visit the boys, and they said, "Oh, Dad, you've got to hear this little singing group. We're going to go out to churches and do some Valentine banquets."
Oh, yeah,
and
we had
like
big
that.
ideas.
Yeah. And so we went to the stairwell at the end of Old Main because that had the best acoustics on campus.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
And I still remember seeing you guys just lined up on the stairwell and sounding really, really good. I was amazed. It was kind of like Glad wannabe.
Oh, okay.
They wasn't necessarily the traditional Maranatha music at that time.
Well, we were not an official Maranatha group.
No, you weren't.
That's a good memory. Yeah, I remember that too. And in fact, I always knew that my office would be just right there next to that stairwell. Not.
Yeah.
Okay. Man, and it's still the best acoustics on campus. I mean, we've got some nice spaces on campus, but we got Daniel is our audio engineer here today. Have you ever, with your group, sang in the stairwell? Yeah, you know what we're talking about. They have a similar group.
Really?
Are you in low key?
No.
You're not in low key? Praise men, though. Yeah, for sure.
And the very first 2 who went out for Maranatha in the first summer after it had a year's experience with 40 slides in a single slide projector, the kind you put a slide in, turn around, put another one, was my brother-in-law now, Wayne Vaughter, and myself, and we traveled and we sang together, doing a lot of Paul Levine and Bob Finley, the blind singer, guitar, and we traveled throughout the West and spent the entire summer promoting the brand new Maranatha Baptist College. And so
you are a Pillsbury alum as well. Or did you graduate undergrad from Pillsbury and then come to Maranatha, or what was the sequence there?
No, I spent a couple of years there.
Okay.
I had done graduate work at Central Seminary while I was in high school, which was only a block from my home.
Okay.
Yeah, I can imagine 7 in the morning Hebrew class, and then run to North High in Minneapolis down the block and continue my education. I had a few years undergraduate with some of the same faculty who ended up starting Maranatha.
Okay, that's
and then
the sequence.
As upperclassmen, I felt it was the God's leading to come here and help the school kind of get started. And I just had a year left, or a little bit more than a year. And so I was able to come and enjoy being part of that initial year of Maranatha. And it's just a tremendous memory. And as I told my children, that there's nothing like that.
Yeah.
They'll never have that experience of that.
Right.
That was a special faith year that can't be repeated.
How many students do you recall being in the student body here at Maranatha that first year? Do you remember?
We had about 160 on campus. We had a number of married folks who, especially the men, and a few townspeople who came in for a few classes. I think they said there were 200 total, but the reality in the dorms, I'm very familiar because we had 2 guys' dorms, which were 2 barracks rooms with 40 bunk beds in each room, and that's the guys. And the gals were the cloister, and my wife was the proctor of the cloister, in charge of all the girls.
Okay.
So she knew them all and was the one they went to.
What does the cloister mean?
The cloister is where the Brothers of the Sacred Heart that lived here lived. That's the 3rd floor of the old main with the little rooms there.
Okay.
Just envision 3 ladies in each of those rooms. Some of them finished, some of them just lath and plaster, attic type rooms, and 1 bathroom. And that was the ladies' dorm.
Oh, wow.
And so
at least their bathroom was on the same floor as where they were living.
That's true. Ours was always an adventure to leave the barracks there on the 1st floor and have to first poke your head out the door and make sure Dr. Cedarholm was not in his office at the end of the hall, because he was there day and night, I swear. And then run like crazy. This is 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning. You got to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
And zip downstairs to our wonderful bathroom, which had, 40 toilets, and the next room had 40 sinks, because it was a military academy. And
now that's our academy level. The high school is taken over that level.
But I have been down there, and it's a little bit remodeled since then.
Big time. Yeah, there are no longer 40 sinks in each of those. I didn't realize it was that big. That's funny. And you had to assemble your own beds, and were you part of that crew?
Yes. We came early. They had asked my wife and I. My wife, and at that time, we weren't even talking with each other. We knew each other from some musical groups at Pillsbury. She had been a student as well, but we weren't friends. It was, hate at first sight type of thing. And so, but Dr. and Mrs. Cedarholm, especially Mrs. Cedarholm, had the envision of us as a wonderful couple with different assets and different temperaments, and that we could really be used of the Lord. And so she put us together, welcoming in families who were coming to look at the school to see, is there really going to be a school here? Is this going to really be a college at the end of August of '68? And so we would walk around and show them, talk about the miracle of all the plates and the carrots and the other stories that are now legend, and try to do a good sales pitch, and then barb and fight and parry and thrust back and forth.
Okay.
And
she liked that energy.
After a few days, I realized I didn't hate this prim, proper, never got a demerit in her life.
I don't trust people like that.
If 75 demerits got you campus, I had 70 before the first week. Anyway, I could hardly believe that this was a woman who could stand up to me, who had a wit. It ended up, by the way, she graduated as the summa cum laude, whatever, and I just barely made the cum laude level for the honors diplomas. But anyway, that's another story. You can cut that, please. Just stop that now. My wife watches this. But anyway.
That's amazing. So Thelma kind of paired you up subtly.
She had that worked out and smiled all the time. That little kind of a little side glance smile at her. And then she had us both in the madrigal choir and both traveling together. And Matt, within 3 weeks, I was so smitten in love. It was just amazing. Friday the 13th of September of 68. And I asked Teresa, that was the day they opened the snack shop in the basement of Old Main. And I said, would you like to go to the snack shop and just talk, because we've been fussing and fighting and devouring one another. And she said, all right. And so we sat down, a little dish of ice cream just sitting there melting in the cup. And she said, I need to apologize to you for being not a sweet, loving person, and that my attitude has been wrong, and would you forgive me? And I looked at her and I said, yes, I would. And then she looked at me and said, do you have something to say? And I said, not that I can think of. And so she stood up and took her ice cream and dumped it in my lap and walked out. And that was our
first.
Are
you telling the truth?
That's my first date. That Friday the 13th of September.
Well, that went well.
Yeah. And then Friday the 13th of December, I gave her a ring.
So
and then
that wasn't the end of it. Then the ice cream in the lap.
No,
you didn't take no for an answer.
I asked out her roommate for a date. But I was.
She couldn't get away from your roguishness, your rugged look.
My good looks and winsome personality. Yes, that's. I've never been accused of either of those.
Your rakish charm.
Well, and you got to remember, I'm 6'6". I was 142 pounds, so I looked like a refugee from Auschwitz, and I had a big mouth to overcome the oddness of the height and the skinniness and that. Right. I enjoyed humor.
Sure.
You know I still do, because I've sent out the Griffnet, named after me, since 1996.
Wow.
5 days a week humor or a quiz or something fun for student type thing. And then every weekend a serious, more spiritual or political or something more on a serious nature. And we've done that now for how many years that is, 28, 29 years I've been doing that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I assume then that at some point you graduated and stuck around for a little bit for graduate school and all that.
Yeah, they didn't really have a plan for a graduate school, but I didn't know what to do next. Mm-hmm. I finished with most of my classwork that first year and just had a couple of classes I needed to finish up to actually get a BA.
Did you walk in May of that first year, like 69?
No, so because I was still short credits.
They didn't let you do that. Okay.
Well, and I'd only been there in college 3 years, not 4. I was taught that if you had 10 years until Jesus came, you should spend 4 years in Bible college and 3 years in seminary. And then the other 3 years you'd be able to effectively minister. And so I said, no, I'll spend 3 years in college and 1 or 2 years in seminary and get out as fast as I can, because Jesus is coming soon.
Yep.
And he is.
Right. You weren't wrong.
I wasn't wrong. It's the timing wasn't up to me. No one asked my opinion.
Is that right?
I mean, I would have assumed by now. So, yeah, we both actually walked in May of 70.
Okay.
But I had already finished about 25 graduate credits by then. And so I took my Hebrew, and then we got married in June of 70, and I wanted to get married on Friday the 13th of June of 69. Keep that Friday the 13th going.
Yeah, that was working so well for you.
But Teresa's father had an idea that Baptist ministers were, number one, not trustworthy, and number two, you don't know some of the pastors in Wyoming that I could tell you, but we won't mention that publicly. But I would probably just abandon her, so she needed to have her degree and a career. She's a teacher, and be able to raise a family when I abandon her and run off with the church secretary.
Well, that was a very pessimistic view of things.
Well, he was a realist more than anything, and so we had to wait an entire year. By the way, being engaged for 21 months is not good.
You don't recommend it?
No, I would say, who can I talk to out here? Can I? Don't do that.
Okay. Yeah. 9 months is pretty much the best.
That should be plenty.
Yes. I had heard 9 months was the best, and I'm a stickler for doing things on a plan. So I asked my wife to marry me exactly 9 months from the date that we had secured for our wedding. And I had privately booked that with the church before I actually formally asked her. Okay, which is a little bit dangerous, but again, I want to be prepared. So then the pastor of our church, his son got engaged after us, and he wanted that date, and we got bumped, and so I was off by a week. So it was only 8 months and 3 weeks instead of 9 full months.
Yeah.
So
well, ours was a long time, and it was very hard. But anyway, we were married, and then I only had the one more semester till December of 70, and till I finished my master's.
Is it true? And I assume you got permission because it was Thelma's arrangement. But is it true? Like back in the day, you kind of had to get Dr. Cederholm's approval on your engagement status?
I could have brought you the note.
Oh, really?
My wife has such a scrapbook that she has that note that says, Dr. Cederholm, blah, blah, blah. This is our verse. You have to have a verse.
Verse.
Whatever it was, Jesus wept or whatever it was, the verse. And could we have permission to be engaged during the school year? Which you got to remember back in those days when universities and colleges actually had school.
Yeah, right.
They had 18-week semesters.
Oh, man.
And so you actually got an education. We won't talk about that anymore. But so if you got engaged in the middle of December, the semester didn't end until the middle or 20th of January. You came back 3 weeks after Christmas break of school.
Yikes.
Which did allow you to do a lot of the project and work over Christmas break and get that prepared.
Oh, sure. I'm sure you were really, really good at doing that. Yeah. Well, because of that old school process that was involved, every time I see one of our students' couples get engaged on Facebook, they announce it. I'd use the same one-word comment every time, approved. And I'm sure none of them have any concept of the connection of that, but I always put that on there. But that was kind of my own little homage to the old days.
That was very, very real.
Yeah. Did you know my dad when he was here? He graduated in 73, so it was a little after your time.
I don't recall him. He must.
He was
not
out here for a couple of years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And by then I was. I got to know a number of the students because by 72 I'd become a senior pastor in Wild Rose, which is 100 miles from here, and became the editor of the alumni newsletter that we put out here.
We were a little busy.
And so it was a small country church, and it gave me plenty of time to do other projects like that. So I got to come down to campus a few times a semester meet with students, get stories and things like that. But it was mostly we're focusing on just keeping the alumni in touch with what was happening, because Maranatha was starting to become a real school after those first few years of just the birth pangs of and the enthusiasm that covered a lot of sin, to be able to develop the programs and the teaching positions and philosophy.
Right.
It really changed, and so I was very.
You only had a couple years worth of alumni at that point, so.
Well, but we had.
What was your distribution?
Yeah,
was it in the dozens?
I think we had 40 in the class of 70, and 41, I think, in class of 71. All right. And I think there were 8 or 9 the first year.
But, we know that goes broader. It goes to all the pastors.
Oh, yeah.
It goes to all the supporting churches and folks, yeah.
And we've always supported the school, and it brings up just an interesting sidelight. In 1996, Pillsbury College, where we had left, and I left, and I said I would never return unless they took back what they said about me. They had said, leave and don't ever come back. That's just pretty fair subtle. Enough. That's fair enough, because I had left the Minneapolis Central Pillsbury orbit and gone with Dr. Cedarholm to start
so it was
Maranatha.
Like persona non grata.
Oh, it was just, if a Baptist can lose his salvation, that would have been me because of that move.
Defrocked.
Yep.
Yeah.
So in 1996, Pillsbury was going through another crisis time and had lost a number of faculty and was in very difficult straits. My boys were both students here at that time, and they asked me to come back and teach. And so I was thrilled to be able to go back and help that school through that crisis. Obviously, they went
maybe heal some of the old wounds there too,
and just enjoy it. And I was able to commute from Wyoming. It was only 845 miles one
just
way,
around the corner.
And so 17 days on campus, and then drive home for a long weekend, preach in my church back in Wyoming, drive through the night Sunday night, and be ready at 7 o'clock Monday morning to teach without any sleep.
Oh my goodness!
Except for what I slept on I-90 driving.
Well, I hope not. Did your wife make those trips with you sometimes?
No.
Oh, wow.
Never. She had her own clinic in Wyoming.
Yeah, right.
Couldn't be grandfathered into Minnesota's legal system, and so she stayed there and worked and
kept things going.
And then we just treated it as if I had been in the Navy or somewhere, and you're just gone for a few weeks, and you come home, and that's the way life has to be. So it was a little different stage of life, but we've jumped way.
Yeah, we've gotten way ahead of ourselves, because I actually want to ask you this
Okay.
question before we kind of explain
Okay.
the what. Let's talk about the foundation behind it.
Oh.
What is your mission in life? How do you articulate that? You have such a diverse range of ministry and experience. It's unfolded according to a certain path as you look back. You still look forward to other things. So what governs that? What's your mission?
I had drilled into my brain by our youth pastor, who wanted to make a man out of me, which most youth pastors want. They want these crazy teenage boys to mature and grow up to be a man of God. And he kept using the word servant. He said, as long as you keep that forefront in your mind, that no matter what direction, no matter how the path might open or doors might close, be willing to be a servant and do what is before you. There's ministry, there's work to do, and if God leads you to something, just say, Lord, I'm willing to do it. And that was easy for me when I finished in December of 70 with my master's here, because Dr. Ron Allen, I don't know if you know him or not, he had been one of the seminary fellows that I had worked with as a high schooler, and then at Pillsbury. He had been in Michigan and started a wonderful youth program, just praiseworthy, a lot of students coming to Maranatha. And he went to take a senior pastorate, and he recommended me to that church. And so I went there, just stepped right into a growing ministry. I figured this is what God wants me to do, because I can serve him in an area where I'm very well trained to be a servant. And after a couple of years and a new pastor coming in and a new direction in the church, which was not where I was at, God opened the door of working with the military. And so I was endorsed as a chaplain in the U.S. Navy by the Associated Gospel Churches out of Canada at the time, because there was no Baptist group endorsing chaplains.
Right.
And so I went to Detroit Naval Yard to be sworn in and said, this is a new direction God's leading, and I'll be a servant here. And I say with no respect, Tricky Dicky Nixon decided that weekend to say, oh, we're going to withdraw from Vietnam and we're going to phase down the troops and we don't need any more officers. So the whole core of us who were standing there ready to be sworn in, for lawyers, a dentist, a doctor, all of us standing there, were all told, here's a stipend check for you. God bless you. We'll never see you again.
Wow. Just summarily axed the program.
Yeah, and of course we're resigned from a church and nowhere to go. And then I said, Lord, what do you have in mind? And my wife and I prayed, and we said, okay, where does God want us to serve? Well, I'm an inner city boy from Minneapolis. I know nothing about the rural farm life. So that's God, in his infinite sense of humor, said, oh, we have a church with 13 people in it in the middle of Wisconsin that are all farmers. We'll just have Bob be a pastor there. So Dr. Cedarholm called me on the phone and said, say, did that work out with the military? I said, no. And he said, well, I have just the thing. And he recommended me, and the church gave me a 13-0 vote.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Six of those people died in the next year.
Oh,
but that's
no.
it was that type of congregation, very old and very small church.
Yeah.
And God blessed us there, and we had 7 years of wonderful ministry there, 7 more years then in Chautauqua at the Baptist church there where the camp is.
I didn't know you were in Chautauqua.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Good
And
churches
in
up
the
there.
school up there, and we had a wonderful ministry there. And so, Matt, God, when you say, okay, I'm willing to be a servant, well, a servant then has to say, I have no will. I can't make choices. Now, I can have 2 or 3 options, and I can say, well, this looks like the best situation or whatever. But the reality is, when God opens a door and it becomes clear in your heart that this is a burden that God's placed there for you, it was a no-brainer. So.
Yeah. So you mentioned a few different aspects of how you knew what God's will was. Certainly there are practical elements to that, but it also has to do with the desire that God gives you, the preparation that you have, the wise counsel that you received from mentors and other godly folks, and then the confirmation of the church itself as they voted to bring you. I mean, all those elements together kind of show the way.
Right. And in a small church in Wild Rose, I was 30 minutes from Stevens Point, UW Stevens Point campus, so I decided I'd go up one day a week, take an afternoon and evening class, and get a bachelor's or master's in education area so that I could help in the Christian school movement, because I felt that at the time was a great burden that I had, and probably because I had children.
Yeah.
And I wanted to make sure they would have that option, because I was not pleased with what I saw in much of the government school system. So
that is a wide range of things between, pursuing the chaplaincy. God closes that door, right or wrong in terms of the government side, but then uses that to lead you into pastoral ministry.
Right. And I found that I love being a senior pastor. I love exposition. I am a theologian, still a neophyte. I'm going to grow up someday and learn enough. But you know how it is. The more you study, the more you realize what you don't know.
Absolutely.
And so I decided to go that direction. And then when I was in Chautauqua, I decided that since I didn't have counseling training, that was a weak area. Can I say that about Maranatha at the time?
No, sure.
I mean, that's the way it was.
It wasn't really the emphasis of the pastoral ministry at that time.
No. Oh, Dr.
Pulpit
Weeks and
emphasis,
others.
much
Yeah,
more.
it was a very different program, but the needs of the people were very obvious. And so I talked to my church board, and our church in Wild Rose was growing exponentially, and they said, why don't you go to Liberty and take a 2-week summer program and get certified in counseling with Dr. J. Adams down there.
Oh, wow.
And so I got
The original.
the original, yeah. The fellow who later, when I was teaching at Pillsbury, I used his books to teach counseling classes. But I got to sit under his work there. And Dr. Falwell and Dr. Henson and a few of the others that were there on staff. And then I decided, well, okay, now if we've got a Christian school and we have need here, we need a program to teach the history of Wisconsin from a Christian perspective. There wasn't anything for the Christian schools. And we had, I would say, roughly 50 or 60 Christian schools in the state. And so over the next 2 years, I wrote the history of Wisconsin from a Christian perspective, did it in workbook form, lecture form, tests, the whole 9 yards. And then the seminary, Trinity Seminary, said that they would use that as part of my doctoral study so that I could get a Doctor of Ministries in counseling with an emphasis on education. That, schools do that. They play games with your titles of your degrees or your majors or whatever it might be. So
that's where you end up with the doctorate, almost a combination of the two.
Yeah, and I decided at that point I would never quit learning. I would never quit going to school. So I continued then on to get other. I have many degrees above zero. That's, but you know what that does? It makes nice alphabet soup behind your name.
So when you talk about being a servant, not having a will, we talk a lot about servant leadership here at Maranatha. You've been a leader organizationally, a leader in your family, a leader in your community in different aspects. How do you balance that servant leadership, right? Because you're not a doormat. You're not just, a pushover and go with whatever the crowd wants, because by and large, crowds tend to get it wrong, when it comes to the peer pressure of things. So there are times when, as a leader, you have to kind of make decisions and say, listen, this is the direction I believe God would have us go. We're going to do this. And so how do you manage or define servanthood or service in the context of leadership as well?
I am not God. I often like to think I am, but I am not God. And I've had to learn, and by the way, the greatest way to learn that was in marriage, that there is a cooperation there. There is a working together there. And that's the way I feel about mission in my life, is that I want to cooperate with what God is doing. I don't want to run ahead of him. I don't want to lag behind him. I want to be a team in that aspect. And so as doors opened or whatever, I felt that was the best use I could make of my time. Part of it was getting education and training so I'd be a capable leader, and yet at the same time be humble and be humble. I learned that God is more interested in the man than in the ministry. And that my relationship with him and in his word, if I can just spend time there and hours there and focus there and try to seek the mind of God, it brought such peace in decision-making, in leadership, and choices of life and steps. And brother, there's steps of faith that you go through in this. And
are there some decisions along the way that you had to make that weren't super popular?
there was one that was popular with me because after pastoring, after the years in pulpit ministry, I had the opportunity. I was asked to go down to Texas, to Dallas, and to be a pastor in a large church there, and to be the dean of a small college, and then be able to go out and speak and talk mostly about education-related things. And that was a heady experience. That was a decision that it was hard to just pack up after ministering at Minneapolis and Wisconsin and then in 2 pastorates here in the state, to leave everything and go down to Texas because...
Yeah, that's really outside your loop.
I'm not a Texan and didn't have, I didn't even speak their language. So that was an area, a decision that I thought, oh, this would really be a good thing. But it was very, very challenging. Mm-hmm. There were lots of pitfalls and lots of challenges in that. And yet, because of the blessing of the internet and Facebook and so forth, the good that comes from that is many of the students that I had in the 1980s from those schools and the people that I worked with are now still friends, and they're all in their 50s and 60s now. Yep. So that's...
You made a new set of connections
right
from that. Your network expanded a bit.
Right. One young couple that was there asked me to marry them, and it ended up that that didn't work out for me to do that, but they were married, and their children, and 2 of them came up here to Maranatha. And so when they went out on summer tours with music, they'd come up and say, "You're the one," and that's always exciting to see. And that,
yeah.
So.
Oh well, a lot of my peers at Maranatha are sending kids to college nowadays, and I've got 3 boys, and they've all come through Maranatha. 2 of them here now, and so I'm always anxious for Jumpstart, because then a lot of my old friends will be showing up, and I'm just kind of nervous that they won't tell any stupid stories about me. Yeah. They're gonna ruin my reputation. I've been working hard to keep all that stuff buried. All right. So, matter of fact, one of the times when you came back, I think we were in the middle of shooting a movie that your boys got me into, and it was some kind of it was going to be a sequel to The Terminator. We didn't know there were going to be any sequels, so
yeah, you were making your own.
We checked a video camera out of the library, and we were making our own here on campus. And I think many bootleg movies have been shot on campus here. In fact, I think last weekend some folks were up on the railroad tracks and got confronted about that by the authorities. And they said, we didn't know it was wrong. Common sense might be a good guide on that one.
My boy showed me a part of one of the movies, the falls downtown. They're running across the falls. I said, that's serious.
Listen, we did all our own stunts.
And then I said, now where's that scene? That isn't done on campus or anything. And they said, no, that's the high school library.
Yeah.
We went in late night.
One of them was a security guard and had a key, so we got in.
Okay. And there comes
allegedly.
There comes a point where Dad simply go, la, 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 la.
Listen, I've been there.
I don't want to
It's hard to do when you're the CEO, though. So, yeah, we have that. You know what, though? I want my boys, you allowed your boys to have fun, to make some of their own mistakes and learn. You do that within the confines of some protections. But you got to learn. I mean, you got to have some of those things, a little freedom to express a personality and have some fun in life. And you've done that over the years.
I have and enjoyed that. And our ministry shifted the most dramatically when my wife became ill because she developed a terminal condition. And the doctors simply gave her at most a year to live. Now, this is our children, our high school age, and we were a C, and the president of the college in Texas said to me, take a year, take your family to Wyoming to help take Teresa there, and then have her parents be able to help you make decisions and raise the children and see how life is going to be.
That's where she's from originally?
Yeah, she's from the Casper, Wyoming area. So that was a challenge. And yet, if you just keep saying, okay, Lord, I'm a servant, I'll go where you lead. And this was an area where obviously God was leading, not where we want to be, not what we want, to literally pack up out of the dean's residence on campus there in Dallas area and head to Wyoming with no job, no security whatsoever. I knew I could write and speak, so I could bring in enough income. And the school down there gave me a full year's salary. It was like a sabbatical type thing where they just said, you take it. They flew Teresa there because she couldn't handle the car trip. And then we watched her deteriorate. It does something to your children when they have to diaper their mother.
No.
When they have to realize that life is hard. There's some real difficult times. And where you don't have a lot of money and you don't have a lot of food. And brother, we have one of the greatest prayer memories of standing around our kitchen, and the kid said, Dad, we had finished church that Sunday evening, and we were just members of a little local church in Wyoming, a few blocks from our house, and we'd walked home, and they said, what are we going to have for supper? We opened up the pantry in the cupboard, and we had packets of ketchup and some soda crackers in the packets that the kids had probably lifted from Wendy's or somewhere. I don't know where they came from originally. That is what we had in our home. And I said, I guess we're going to squirt the ketchup in and add a little bit of water and pepper and that, and we're going to make tomato soup and crackers. And we stood in the kitchen with the kids and cried and said, thank you, Lord, that you provide even tomato soup and crackers. Far cry 20 years after, that's what you do as a seminary student, right? That's how you live with newlyweds.
Beyond that,
a little bit beyond that.
Wow.
And then the doorbell rang, and the pastor said, hey, I just felt burdened to bring you a bag of groceries. And we just said, this is wonderful. We laid it on the counter, and then the doorbell rang again. And 11 families from the church all brought bags of groceries to our house. And if Baptists could dance, well, we can, just not very good because we didn't get practice. Right. That's the problem.
Yeah, we weren't taught in school.
we did one of those wonderful happy dance hug in the kitchen, and Teresa was starting to get better and starting to feel like, because of some herbal alternative health things.
Really?
And so because of that piqued her interest, and actually it took her about 6 months to be able to get back to semi-normal, and then about 2 years until she could really get involved. She got involved with Chinese herbs and different things, and then she said, well, I'm going to go back to school. She already had her master's in education, so she said, I'm going to go back to school, and I'm going to learn about natural health, alternative health. And we said, okay. And that was another step in the turn there. And God used her for 25 years with a clinic in Wyoming, helping people who were given up by the medical profession.
Yeah, 1 year to live, and she's still with us.
She is there. Yeah, she'll be.
Praise the Lord.
I can't tell you how old she'll be.
Okay, no, don't do that.
But I've turned 77, and she's only a few weeks younger than me.
Okay.
So,
good call not saying.
Yeah, just don't want to imply anything.
No, that would be...
God gave her. And then through that, we had a ministry and an outreach that was vastly different, because all of a sudden we became in business. I became the CFO of a clinic with, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of ordering and herbs and things from China and Korea. We traveled to China and the stories. No one's really interested in this, are they, Matt?
I'm fascinated by this. This is incredible. I had no idea. I met Josh and JP as students. These guys, these huge guys, football players, funny, fun-loving, talented, smart, personality for days, driving these tiny little 3-cylinder cars. I don't know. Was it a Yugo? I mean, it was some kind of
Hyundai XL. Yeah.
I don't know, man. It was
yeah, you fold it up to get inside.
To call that an XL is a definite tongue in cheek, but just love those guys. Awesome to see how God has used your family. Got to know Lissa once she came along too, the younger sister, and then she goes and marries Mike Z, which I don't know. I mean, the Lord has obviously a sense of humor to pair your families together. And Mike is here serving the Lord faithfully. Just got his doctorate, so now we have. And he has the greatest T-shirt. Have you seen his T-shirt about his doctorate? He says, "I'm a doctor, but not the kind that helps people." Yep. You know, and he's kind of a legend now on campus as well. And I just think about the legacy that you're describing from those unplanned, unguided experiences of life that God used to very much plan and guide your step, but in ways that you couldn't have anticipated or manipulated.
Could I share a story?
Yeah.
You should be interviewing my wife, by the way.
Okay. Maybe next one, yeah.
If there is a season 11, whatever, might be.
I don't know who would cancel us, but, if YouTube shuts down.
We could hope. But I came home one weekend, long weekend from teaching in Minnesota, and wanted to sit with my wife in our little local church a block from our house. And she had such a ministry helping people who were going to die, that there was no hope. And a lot of times she would test them and work with them and realize, they're going to die.
Yeah.
So she took that as the opportunity to use it as a witness. And very intently say, hey, you're going to punch the ticket, but if you don't have a ticket when you die, where are you going to head? Where are you going to end up? And a little gal who was Buddhist sat there and did not understand, did not know. And my wife, in their counseling over a course of weeks and that, shared the gospel with her, and she got saved. And had just a few weeks to live. And so I came home, and my wife is telling me the story of this wonderful young lady, and she said, and she comes to our church here, and we sit together, and I can continue to mentor her because we just don't know how long it'll be. So I came home, sat down in the pew, arm around my wife, because we've been separated for 3 weeks at a time. And in came this young lady, and I moved aside, and she snuck right between us and sat down and held one hand on me and one hand on Teresa, and just said, I just love the Lord. I just love to be in church. I love God's people. This is so wonderful. I finally have hope. I finally have the answer. And we thought, Lord, perhaps this is part of your plan of ministry and mission that we never saw coming. And the first hymn that was opened up was, He the Pearly Gates Will Open. And I'm standing there, I'm 6'6", not 142 pounds anymore, but 6'6", and my wife on the other side of her, and this little gal. And she started singing, and then she choked up a little bit. And then she looked up at me, and I leaned my head down, and she pointed the words. She said, I'm going to be there soon. I'm going to be there. I'm going to see Jesus. I'm going to be in heaven. That'll make a Baptist cry.
Yeah.
And Matt, that's, if I could talk to the students here, which I've never had the opportunity, by the way. Did you know that?
No.
I came back as a notable alumni.
Well, there's a list.
Oh, yeah. Dr. Cedarholm asked me to preach. I came back.
Yeah.
And I had a mustache.
And that was it.
And he said, you have to shave that off. And I said, I don't have to
preach. And now
preach.
the president himself has a mustache. Can you believe that? We need to talk to that guy.
Yeah.
You're invited not to preach unless you would shave your mustache.
And I had to shave the mustache.
That's harsh.
And then he said, if you shave it, then he said, you'll have to use a little powder on there to make sure there's no dark, because it'll show, we've got to be a good testimony. Well, that was a different era.
Yeah, it was a different cultural
You
thing.
got to remember, that was just, the hippies were still around, and
Yep.
the drug culture and the whole thing. And so
Wow.
where did we get off on that? Please
You were
ask
talking,
me another question.
No, I tell you what, I appreciate the stories because that's really where it all plays out. And your mission of being a servant kind of has taken you along for the ride, but in a way that you could perhaps now look back and see the hand of God, the providential guidance along the way.
Oh, almost immediately.
Yeah.
As it unfolded, then we could say, okay, Lord, now we see how this is all going to work. But we still don't see the end picture.
Does the story about the groceries, I mean, that's like the children of Israel set up memorial stones along the way. That story is one of your family's, monuments to God's
we've got that
provision.
pile of rocks in the middle of the Jordan.
So now you look back, and when things happen now that you don't understand, you've got a reservoir of faith and God's faithfulness through experience to draw back on and maybe have a little more confidence to trust Him at a deeper level.
And that's really what maturing in faith is learning to trust God, because we say it. We don't always live it inside. And, so it's been a joy the last 15 years of our ministry. In Wyoming, we preached all over the state. We helped churches. I jokingly say we help churches get started, but the reality is we help churches close because the population in the little towns were drying up and they couldn't afford a pastor. And so they merged.
Consolidate them together.
It's a hard
The West
area.
is a hard place to minister, isn't it?
Yeah.
But there is a need.
Yeah. There's more people in Milwaukee County than there are in Wyoming.
Oh, wow.
So that, we have like a small town with really, really long streets.
Very spread out.
Yeah. And so we preached in Bill, Wyoming. Have you ever been in Bill, Wyoming?
Can't say that I have.
Okay. 3 railroad workers, all named Bill, William, and Will, decided that they needed a stop for water and things on the trains back from the coal mines heading back east, because thank you, Wisconsin, for buying Wyoming coal and
Happy to
keeping our economy alive and paying our taxes. There are no taxes in Wyoming,
nice.
which was a big shock when we retired back in Wisconsin. But
Surprise.
that's a whole nother story. Bill had 8 or 10 ranch families from 12, 15 miles away that all came into this little place, one gas pump, grocery store / post office, and a mobile home that was a one-room school in just a single-wide mobile home. And then across the parking lot was the Dry Creek Town Hall, outhouses, no running water in it like that. And that's where church was.
In the town hall.
In the town hall. And every Sunday, the people would bring in coolers full of food and water. And we preached. And my son, Josh, who was pastoring at Saddleback at the time in California, a church of, 80,000 or something. Yeah. He said, Dad, I got to take some pictures out here. And he went around. He said, okay, I'm going to just stand here with my camera. And he went around the circle. He said, you can't see anything except blue sky and prairie. Nothing. He said, the people there, the high schoolers are going to say, there isn't a place like that in America.
Did you go to the moon?
Yeah. Where's the rover, the Mars rover?
That's where they filmed that, actually. That's another conspiracy theory, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
For another day.
Maybe, yeah.
I heard that they found the location, and there's like pictures that match exactly to the. So my faith at this point, there's not a conspiracy theory you could throw out where I wouldn't go, I could see that.
Yeah, especially in the last few years.
Yeah,
all the things
they're all true.
Go, true. Yeah.
Just wait long enough.
So, it was a wonderful ministry, and then the last 15 years we finally decided, when I was getting older, that we would start a church that we could retire in Casper,
the big city,
particular Baptist, like the old-fashioned ones of the 1640s and so forth. And we sang hymns. If it was written before 1800, it was too modern.
Yeah, you don't want to get into that.
But we
don't want to take any risks.
Yeah, so we had
Patch the Pirate. Whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah. Oh man. So we had wonderful ministry, and then I had a stroke, a massive right brain stroke, and realized maybe my goal, which was always to be just preaching, and if I'm going to die, I want to die in the pulpit.
Sure.
I want to just keel over on the when I'm preaching.
That'd be exciting for the crowd.
Well, that's what the deacons said as they gave me a gift certificate to U-Haul. They said, this could be very traumatic on the children in the front row if, you died there. And we came out of that stroke and recovered from it miraculously after a few days in ICU and all those good things. God really spared my life. But we realized that all of a sudden the energy and the ability was just crashing down. It just didn't have it. And so that's when God brought us back here to Watertown. One more little story. I don't know. Do we have time here?
I just go as long as you want, man.
Oh yeah, that's right. You're going to edit all this. I forget that. Yeah, and it's all, but I don't want to be late for lunch.
No,
you are. Well, never mind. When I was in seminary here, the Moravian Church decided that they got land donated on the northeast side of town, 50-acre orchard area. And they were going to build a nursing home because the underserviced part of the population to them was not the children, not the rescue mission, not the schools, not it was the elderly that weren't being taken care of. And so they built a little 20-bed cement block building out there in the middle of the orchard. And Dr. Weeks in my seminary class said, "Hey, Bob, would you like to go and preach over there?" I said, "Sure, there's 20 beds there." Well, there were 5 people that they wheeled out into a little room about this size. I do believe one was awake.
At least to start with.
Yeah, probably by the time I was done, they might have been doing CPR on him too. I'm not sure, but I preached there. And I thanked them and said, "This is really a good ministry for old folks."
Yeah.
Fast forward 55 years, and I are one.
Yeah.
And my daughter said, "Dad, you can't shovel snow. You can't mow lawn. You can't do it. You're out in the middle of nowhere, Wyoming. Not the end of the world, but you can see it from my back porch." I mean, we're out there in Wyoming. And she said, "If you have another stroke or a heart attack or something like this, or Mom is sick,
way far away, yeah,
you got to be near help." And so she said, "I'll look around here and find a little place here." And she found a couple little places, not cheap, by the way. Watertown has got an economy issue.
Mm-hmm.
And then I said, "Yeah, but I still have to shovel driveway." She said, "Well, I'll get my son, Dan. He'll come over and shovel for you." And
strapping young man.
Yeah. And I said, "No, there's got to be something else." And my wife's kid sister, another story, Carol Bauder.
Yes.
That's her baby sister. She and Wayne met at our wedding. Wayne was my best man. Dr. Oates was the groomsman with me. And
Wait. Carol Vodder is your wife's sister?
Baby sister. Yep.
I did not know that connection. Okay.
Yeah.
And they met at your wedding.
At our wedding.
Okay.
And then fell in love, and a few years later got married. And
that was another good match.
Yeah, and Mrs. Cedarholm might have had something to do with that too. I'm
Probably.
not sure. And so I was going somewhere with this conversation.
Well, you were talking about how you ended up at Marquardt, but yeah.
Oh, thank you. So, yeah, that's enough. Did I mention I had a stroke?
You did.
And that I'm 77, and my mind, what little I have is still on shaky ground. But anyway.
But now you're serving there.
Yeah, it's exciting because they went and saw what had happened there, that they had built, expanded.
I'll say. It's beautiful.
They had built retirement apartments for people like Carl Henry, the Christianity Today editor, lived there.
Yeah.
And we're setting up for any denomination. But it was Moravian, which is Lutheran Light. But a wonderful burden for older folks. Then they built a huge apartment complex. They built 3 condo complexes with 1,500 square feet and underground parking, the whole, beautiful
very nice
thing. And then 72 homes surrounding the campus. And my daughter and Carol, my wife's kid sister, went and looked and said, this is where you need to retire, because they do the shoveling and the mowing and the painting. And they showed me a picture of a house that was 25 years old. It had been gutted totally, and they just said, okay, where that pipe is where the kitchen sink will be.
You get to decide
but
all
you decide everything.
How nice.
And so we sat there, never having seen the place other than on a camera, going around like this. And we made the paint colors. We decided where cabinets and utilities, or everything would be. And 4 years ago this Easter was our last Sunday in our church we founded. And we ordained on that day, my assistant, who had been one of the men that had become an elder and had been there from the church's founding. And he was retiring at 50 or something from the school teaching, a public school.
Yeah, good fit.
So he had some income coming in because, you're a mission church in Wyoming. You just have to realize that. And he was just, it was one of the best times. The people, then we had a dinner. People all came to our driveway, and the whole church came. We had about 50 there to load the U-Haul and pack it all and say goodbye. And we came here sight unseen, and Marquardt had grown into a 55-acre campus with these beautiful buildings, lots of people there. And now God's given me opportunity to preach. When there's any need there, they need a preacher, they call me.
And you said they have like a 300-seat chapel now for that to take place.
Yeah.
That's great.
If there's 50 or 100 people there, that's a great day. But
sure, any given day.
Yeah. But there's 500 in the campus there that are living there, that are most of us independent living, but they also not only have the houses and the big condo apartments, they have 2 assisted living, a memory care, and now the 140-bed nursing home and rehab center. And I do believe they own a cemetery too.
Yeah,
so they
got one-stop shopping.
That's it. We can. They just.
I hope to live there someday.
Ebenezer, I think it's where they get.
Well, my boys are graduating from college, so I like that part about not having to do the driveway and the yard.
It's such a joy. Yeah, just get up this morning and say, well, okay, we had snow overnight because it's state basketball tournament time, so it has to snow. And
obligation,
and they're out there already swept it off and put salt down to make sure none of it. And they're doing that to all 72 homes in the loop around. And
there you go.
And I'm just thinking, Lord, this is a wonderful place. And yet, even at this stage of life, as I'm nearing the finish line, and we've got to be honest about that. A lot of older folks, put the blinders on until something terrible happens, and then they've got 3 weeks to realize, well, Thankfully, I had this. Thankfully,
can you be
I had
thankful?
the stroke.
Yeah,
5 years ago now. Halloween. 5 years ago. My goodness. And that was my wake-up call. And I guess maybe at 72, I should have been thinking about retiring from pastoring and running around the state. And my wife had retired from her clinic the year before, so we were realizing that life changes, brother. You're young yet. I can say that because you're the age of my boys.
I am.
And a ruddy youth.
Yeah. Not to these students. They think I'm ancient, man.
I know.
Just like I thought everybody was old. There was just one category. Somebody over age 25, old.
Yeah, I'm amazed when Don Scoble was music man here. Great mentor in my life, and he's still alive. He was old. He was our choir director and all that. And I'm thinking, what in the world?
Right.
But almost all that generation is gone.
Yeah.
And I'm the old one now. And now that my boys are both past 50, and their kids were heading to California for a grandchild's wedding, he's a pastor. My grandson is a pastor.
Praise the Lord
at
for that.
The Mariners Church. He's a high school pastor, church of 25 or 30,000. They have a different life in California
it's
than
a little
we
different
do.
deal, yeah, for sure. Say it mildly.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for taking some time to reflect on that legacy. It's a legendary time and epic of Maranatha history that, like you said, we are blessed to have some that can still tell us the stories from the firsthand perspective, but then it goes beyond that. And sometimes I think maybe we could have a tendency to over glorify the past as if it's some different time of God's working, and yet you've kind of shown how God's been working in your life right up until the present day.
Right till today.
Yeah.
And I sit here in the basement of a building. There was a barn here.
Yep.
And the Maranatha, and the old Sacred Heart Academy. Mm-hmm. We were there when the brothers were there.
You met the brothers.
I met them
Yeah.
in the train room downstairs
Okay.
where they had a model train that they worked on, and they lived in the cloister, and they showed us all around because we knew God was going to do something here.
Wow.
We didn't realize it was the place. It was really the people.
Mm-hmm.
That's, we remember, this was here and
Yes.
that, and they had a cornfield, and then they built houses along there, and that was fun. Yeah, but it's the people that I remember,
Right.
the men and women who poured their lives into me and my wife, and then with Dr. Winiger in that era, into my children, and now into I have a grandson graduating in God, I hope he graduates.
I think he's fine.
He decided, after he should have graduated last year, and he decided, no, I'm got to take some more classes and get an associate's
Kids
in
these
this
days
area.
aren't as
They're
anxious to get out. You know what I mean?
I wanted to get out in the ministry.
I had my car backed up to the dorm and ready to go.
Get out of this place.
Well, the miracle continues, and the mission that you're describing is still the mission here at Maranatha, and by God's grace, He continues to send us faithful servants like you and your wife, and I'm thankful for the privilege we have to reconnect in these days of what you're calling retirement, but I know you're very busy still.
Yeah.
And so keep up the great work, and thank you so much for spending the time with us.
All right. Can I give a plug?
Yeah, give a plug.
www.grif.net is my blog since 1996. We've sent it out every day.
All right.
And it's, I think there are, I think I send the email to 5,000, and then it's on Facebook and the other things as well in that. And I believe probably 2 or 3 people actually read it every day.
Yeah.
So that's good.
That's good stuff.
Good. Yeah.
All right. Shameless plug, grif.net. We'll see you there.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to On Mission, a podcast produced by Maranatha Baptist University. What do you want from college? Classes, professors, and lifelong friends? Yes. But most importantly, you should ask, will this school help me become the leader God wants me to be? But you might worry, will I have a community that I can belong to as a young believer? You will at Maranatha Baptist University in Watertown, Wisconsin. Attending the wrong college carries a high price, undermining your family's values, lost identity, and the tragic destruction of faith and hope that accompanies the cultural filth of a permissive worldly environment. Maranatha is more than a Christian college. We are a community on mission to help you make the most of your college years. Join the family Pursue excellence, advance truth, and find out more at mbu.edu. For more information about our podcast guests and to listen to all the previous episodes, visit mbu.edu/podcast. And join us again next week as we examine what keeps leaders on mission.